Welcome back, and in this video we are going to touch on the recruiter's active jobs and closed jobs. Okay, just on the dashboard from the previous video, I forgot to mention that there is a script over here that redirects a recruiter to the pricing page if they did not select any of the plans. So if you are changing any of the paid plans inside of Memberstack, please change out the attributes over here. So this is the starter plan inside of Memberstack. I just go to plans, starter, and then the plan ID over here. Back to Webflow, you'll be able to see that this is the same ID over here. So if you're changing out a recruiter's plans, please change out these attributes over here as well, so that you can redirect a recruiter if they do not have any of these two paid plans. Okay, that will redirect a recruiter to their pricing page. That one is above here. Just close that. This page over here, where they can then add a paid plan. All right, to the active jobs page. On the active jobs page, you will be able to see another empty state. And for this empty state, we've also given it a Wized attribute for Wized recruiter home, no active jobs. And then at the very bottom, you'll see a jobs card, which you're going to render the information inside of Wized. So in Webflow, we build a skeletal structure. In Wized, we give it a little bit more life and add the dynamic data to it. So for this card, we have recruiter home all jobs active. And then we have the tag. You don't need to define it because we are already on the active page. We have the company logo, so recruiter home jobs company logo. Same for the name, size, the role or the job type, and then the location, the date, and the button as well. All of these we are now going to define inside of Wized. If I just quickly go to the closed jobs page, we have the same sort of layout. Empty state, but we have different types of attributes. So the other page says active, this page says closed. Then we have a jobs card, which also has the closed attributes. Okay, just going over to Wized and heading to my dashboard. Firstly, let me bind a few jobs over here. And just set all of the jobs that we previously had. Okay. And just, yeah. All right. Now I have jobs assigned to me as a user. So if I just go to active jobs over here, you can now see that it shows all of my active jobs and I do not see the empty state. So for this page, if I just clicked on X-ray, you will see that we're still working with the same request as the previous video. So the load recruiter job post request. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is basically do the same thing that we did on the dashboard, where we are loading all of their jobs. But for this page, we're going to make sure that the status of the job, so over here inside of Airtable, the status of the job is set to active. We'll render the job if, so we set up a condition, if the load recruiter job post, yes, is active, and there are a few records for that recruiter, their logged in Memberstack information is equal to the job post information for their member ID and their member Airtable ID. And then now we also check if the status of that job is set to active, and then we'll render. Those are a few filters that will work for this page. And we just give it a little variable over here again to load the recruiter's job posts. And you can see all of the records are here and they're going to be looped through with that variable. And now you can start defining all of the elements on the page. So for the recruiter's image, it's the same as we did on the home page for the recruiter. Set the source because this is an image, and then you're going to reference the request of load recruiter job posts. Use the variable to loop through every record. Same for job name. Now we set it as text. And then the job type, location, the date, we do the same way. We just change the format of the date to be a little bit more legible. And then the button. So for the job button, it's the same as we defined in the previous video. We make sure that the parameter of that job, the parameter job ID of this particular job is set to their ID. So a particular job's ID over here. And then the URL, when a job is clicked by a recruiter, will redirect them to the job post details page with the job ID parameter. And that is it for this page. We have the empty state over here, no active jobs, that we've defined as if the recruiter does not have jobs and the recruiter's job posts are not defined as active, then please show the empty state. Apart from that, that is all you need to define on this page. If you go to the closed page, it will have the same sort of setup as well. So currently, I do not have any closed jobs. Oh, I have one closed job over here. Yes. All right, one closed job. And if I just toggle on the X-ray, I'll be able to see that if I click on the first element, I'll be able to see that, yes, now I've set up another filter to load all of the jobs if this request is successful. And now if that request or if that job post is equal to the logged in members member ID and Airtable ID, but now the status, the condition here is that the status is closed. If all of this is true, this that request will load for closed jobs. We use the variable v.i again with the request load recruiter job posts, and that will give me all of the job posts within this payload, but the filter will filter out to only show the closed jobs. And now you can start defining all of the elements on the page. So the image, the plain, the job name, type, location, the button. Again, the button has the same parameter over here to redirect them to the details page. So the recruiter's post details page over here. And then the link where this button should go when it's clicked, and it will take the job ID with it to the next page. Okay, now let's move on to showing you how this would look like when a user clicks on a job. So if I just go to active jobs, let's start with the active jobs first. If I just go to active jobs, okay, so now you can see all of your active jobs. If I just click on one job over here, I'll be redirected to the job post details page for a particular recruiter. And this is so that the recruiter can essentially mark a job as active or closed and delete a job. Okay, these two pages are different again for recruiters and candidates, these two pages. On this page, you can now set the information for that particular page. You'll see that the attributes on this page are different as well from a candidate's attributes over here. So we have recruiter job post name, post type, location, and so forth. Date, description, pay range. Okay, we are going to start at the very top. For this page, the request we're going to use is load job post because we want to load an individual job post. We have previously defined that request over here. You can see this is the same request that we're going to use on this page. Okay, so for the job post name, it will be load job post request and then the name. Same goes for the type, location, and then the job post date, and then the description, which is set to HTML because job posts, these long descriptions are always in the form of rich text, and we want to convert that. And then the pay range over here. Now we're going to touch on this form that will essentially allow a user or a recruiter to mark a job as active or closed. And there is a make automation that will run with this. So just heading over to make, if I just go back to scenarios, And over here, jobs active or closed status control. That this scenario is the one that is going to control whether a recruiter can set a job as active or closed. Okay, so firstly, as you can see that this scenario starts off with a webhook. So just going back into Webflow to see how the structure of this looks like. We have a form, and this form is called job status form over here. And inside that form, we have two radio buttons. And for the radio button checkbox, we have two attributes over here, Wized bind checked, which is the request for load job post, and then Wized for job status form active. So when a status of a job is active. Same goes for the next one, but just reversed for closed. Then we have a hidden input field here for the job ID. Okay. So if I just expand this page and go all the way down to custom code, there are two scripts running on this page. First script is to add the job ID of the job post page. So when a user is on the job post page, right, the URL will look like this, where there is a job ID here. So what the script is essentially doing is taking the job ID from the URL and putting it in this input field, in this hidden input field. And that is needed so that we can send the job ID through here and get essentially get the job from the job post table, and then update that record over here. Okay, so the first script is to essentially capture the job ID from the URL and place it in the input form. The next script is to reload the form once it has been submitted to the webhook. So if you are changing the webhook inside of Make here, this webhook URL, if I just click this open, so this URL over here is the same one in this script over here. So if you're changing that webhook, please make sure that these URLs are the same. The only other thing you should note here is that this script does reference the job post status form ID over here. So if you're renaming the ID of the form as well, make sure to change this out. Webhook, make sure to change this out if you are changing the webhook URL. Otherwise, none of these would work. Okay, going back over to Make over here. So when that form is submitted, it essentially gets the ID. So this is where the ID comes in handy. So it essentially gets the job post according to that ID that we set. And then it updates that job post with the status that you've now toggled on. And then the webhook response you can leave as 200 because it already redirects or refreshes the page for a user over here. With this script, it essentially reloads that page. And that is it for the job. Actually, no, there's another section for this. Since we've defined the Wized attributes over here, you should now go back into Wized. If you just toggle on the X-ray, you'll see that there's job status form active and closed. So this is in order to set the check for the radio button. So we have input value over here. And what we're going to do is to make sure that this gets checked if the status is active and if the status is not closed. We leave it as blank. Same goes for the next button. We just reverse the logic. So if basically show the radio button as checked if it's closed and not active. All right, moving on to how to delete a job post for a recruiter. So going back inside of Webflow, and if I just click on the job post button, and then since this is a drop-down, open that up, and there's a button over here which falls in a form. So just opening up the form, you'll see that there's a code embed, and that is in order to get the logged in member's member ID. So we need to know who's deleting the job. And then there's a form input that is also hidden. with the job ID ID so that Memberstack, so that Make can know what job is being deleted. The scenario that runs with this is, going back to the scenarios, when a recruiter deletes a job post. So for this, we also have a webhook set up. So this webhook URL over here ties into this form over here for deleting a job post. So we just edit that webhook URL over here. So if you're changing any of the URLs for deleting a job post, please come edit this over here as well. And you can leave that as that. So what this webhook does is gather all of that information and then basically deletes the job if that job ID matches the job ID in the job post table. And that's it. It will then just reload or send the recruiter essentially to their dashboard. So if I just show you how that looks like, if we can just delete one of these jobs and just click on delete over here, actually, just make sure that's running first. Okay. And just click on delete over here. So confirm delete. You'll now see that I've been redirected to my dashboard. And the information that is captured is the job ID, and it just deletes the record. So if I save that and exit, you'll see there are a few less records inside of Airtable because I've deleted one job. And that is it for the jobs active page, closed page, as well as the recruiter's job post details page. In the next video, we are going to touch on the applicants pages. So the pages for recruiter to see the talent pool, their new applicants, so people that have applied to their recruiter's jobs, and then also the applicant profile. Right. See you in the next video. Bye.